Hey everyone, I'm Mind, and we are finally here. Thank you everybody for your patience. I know you guys have been wanting to see these reviews for weeks now. I haven't been allowed to post them until today, but now they are finally here. This is my first early 2023 LEGO Ninjago review. In this video, we'll be taking a look at set 71786, Zane's Ice Dragon creature from, of course, the LEGO Ninjago theme. This set contains 793 pieces, 5 minifigures, and will retail for $99.99 in the US. This set, of course, does not officially release until January 1st, 2023, but it was sent to me early by the LEGO group through the LEGO Ambassador Network, but all opinions expressed in this video are my own. Before I get started, I'd just like to ask you guys to please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I still have a bunch of other early 2023 LEGO reviews coming very soon, including more Ninjago, as well as a few other themes. There's also a ton already up on the channel right now, so if any of that sounds like something you'd be interested in, by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, it'll help put those videos in your feed as soon as they're posted, and also really help support me in the channel. But with all that being said, let's get on to this review. So here's the main build of Zane's Ice Dragon creature, and as you saw in the intro to this video, this is a 2-in-1 set. What that means is there is two different builds for this set. There is the main build, the dragon that you see in front of you right here, and then there's an alternate build that's a sort of mech dragon thing, and I will be reviewing both versions in this video. Starting off with the main build though, wow, this is fantastic. If you've watched my other reviews recently or you're just familiar with the channel, you will have heard me say, I love ice-themed things, I love ice-themed characters, and I've said that in so many videos recently, because LEGO has been making a lot of stuff that I really love. I've been wanting a good ice dragon for years, because Zane sort of gotten the short end of the stick when it comes to dragons. His original was good for 2011, but at the end of the day, it was a 2011 dragon. His 2015 dragon was fine, but it was the first dragon in that style, so the others that came after it were better. He didn't really get a dragon in Hunted, I mean, it was a poly bag, but eh. The Ice Emperor Dragon was cool, but even still it wasn't my favorite, and yeah, that was the last Ice Dragon he had. So when I heard we were getting a $100 Zane Dragon, I was super excited, and based on initial pictures, I wasn't sure how to feel about this guy, but now that I have him in hand all built up, this is basically perfect. I adore this. There's a few minor things I would change, but that's the beauty of LEGO is I can change them if I want. But just out of the box, this is probably one of my favorite sets of all time, or at least specifically in this version. We'll see about the alternate build. So let's take a look at him up a little bit closer. So we'll start at the head of the dragon. This is still using the new molded dragon head system that began with the Overlord dragon in 2020, and then went on to be used in the Island, and Seabound, and Core, and Crystallized. But there are two all-new jaw pieces introduced here. The upper jaw piece, obviously with the printed eyes and the ice picks and everything, is new, and that just looks fantastic all around. I love the dual molding. This lighter blue color is really great. It does a good job of like representing an ice dragon, but also keeps it very unique because this is a color that's not used all too often. And then of course Translate Blue is the iconic ice color, and it being dual molded here looks fantastic. I was fully just expecting them to reuse the same head that was used on the Golden Dragon, but I'm really glad they introduced a new one here. And this lower jaw piece is also new. It's the same part that's used for the upper jaw in Cole's Dragon, and it's also very interesting. You can see it's only molded at the front, and then it's brick built at the back, which is kind of cool because it gives you more customization options. You can build this in different ways. It's more versatile this way. However, it is a bit strange how it's so intricately molded at the front and then just sort of becomes flat at the back. Not a big deal, and it looks fine, but yeah, just definitely something I noticed. However, my one complaint with this head build is the fact that the top and bottom jaw can't really close together. There's just a giant gap there always. No matter how you move that, right? You can give him an underbite, give him an overbite, but there's no way just to place this flat, at least with the jaw connection system that they use in this set. That is honestly kind of disappointing, because as cool as these pieces are, it is weird that his mouth is perpetually always kind of open. I'm not the biggest fan of that. The top and bottom jaw are just connected using Battle Droid arms, which are like fine, I guess. It's better than the gray pieces they've used in other sets, but even so, I would have preferred if this was done similarly to Lloyd's Legendary Dragon from Core last year. That was the perfect dragon jaw because they were connected into a brick-built structure, because that actually looked organic. This is the least organic part of this build, these Battle Droid arms. I am not a fan of that at all. The dragon also has two golden horns coming out of the back of its head. Those are also all new parts for this wave, which I think look really cool. Very versatile, and they are used in a few different sets, but I think they work really well here. As you can see, the head connects onto the neck with a ball joint. Huge range of motion here, so lots of different ways you can pose this guy. And then the neck also connects onto the body with a ball joint, so once again, pretty large range of motion there. Moving to the dragon's body, I love this sort of scaled design. The blue parts are very spiky, which like represents ice really well, but then the white parts are like smoother, which gives off more like snowy vibes, and I think that is just so perfectly done. There's a little saddle at the top of the dragon's back, and there's actually two seats there, so you can have both Zane and Pixal ride the dragon together, which is something we don't see too often on LEGO Dragons, so that's a nice touch. There's how the two of them look actually riding on the dragon together. Behind the seats, there's two banners. These are stickered parts, and they have a picture of a dragon on them, and then an upside down sword on the other side. These are meant to represent the 2-in-1 feature that this set has. And then moving down the dragon's back, you have more of just these ice scales, which just look so perfect. They fit a dragon perfectly, and they fit an ice dragon even better. I just love the shaping on all those. And the way they just all cascade down, it's super, super cool. Out the very back, the tail's once again connected on a ball joint, and then there's a second section of the tail also connected on a ball joint, and then there's this huge golden blade piece coming out the very end. Now this part is all new for this wave, and I will say it does look really good. However, I feel like LEGO's just been introducing a lot of giant gold blade pieces recently. We had a new one in the crystallized wave, and Monkey Kid also has one in January 2023, so I don't know why we need so many giant gold blade pieces, but I won't deny that this one looks good. Not complaining about it. Part of me wonders, like, is that budget better spent elsewhere when there's other pieces that were just introduced that accomplish basically the same thing? I don't know. You guys have to let me know if you have any thoughts on that. But while we're up here, let's take a look at the dragon's wings too. Those use that same blade piece, and you can see the design so one of these smaller gold blades fits in right here. That's actually really cool. It almost makes it look like the gold is the bone and then the blue is the actual wing. And these giant icy blades just look amazing. The wings connect onto the body right next to the saddle, as you can see, and they're on a double set of ball joints. So by moving this down, you can make the wing just flat straight, or you can move it up quite a bit. Unfortunately, you cannot flap it down, and from what I can tell, there's really no good way to like store this guy, like fold the wings up to make him easy to store. Something like this would be my best recommendation, just with the wings straight up, and that honestly doesn't look terrible, so he would still look cool on a shelf like this. But yeah, I always like when dragons have ways to sort of just fold their wings back, and unfortunately that does not seem to be present here. You can see the base of the wings like connect on this armored section, but then the actual top of the wing is only connected on a bar, so that bar part can flap individually. Not a huge range of motion there, but there is a bit of one. However, because it's just a bar connection, sometimes gravity wins out in that scenario. So like this, the bar actually matters, right? You could pose that in two different ways. However, when you have the wing flat and you try to lift the bar section up, it sort of just falls back down. So comparing this to other Ninjago dragons, definitely a very limited range of motion on the wings. However, they look so cool, I kind of just don't care. I don't mind it. It's good enough and they look great. So for some people that might matter more, but for me, it's not the biggest deal. Now coming to the dragon's side and looking at its legs, you can see there's something pretty darn different here compared to other Ninjago dragons. This guy has a total of 6 legs rather than 4. That's a super unique idea that I think is actually executed really well. There's 3 legs on each side, each of them look different and do like their own different thing. And I just think all combined it looks fantastic. Really fits like the scale of this dragon. The front legs are the biggest and the coolest. Lots of snowy, icy texturing all throughout. I love just like the little touches that translate blue to be like icicles growing on the dragon's skin. I think that looks fantastic. And the legs even look alright from the inside too, which is always nice to see. The feet are of course connected on ball joints. Nice design on them too, carries that like very angled design that the rest of the dragon has. And then there's 3 individually posable golden toes. And everything's pretty much the same on the other side, just mirrored. I will say this is not the best connection on the claws, just because these golden pieces are all at different angles. So when trying to angle them all up, sometimes you'll accidentally just push one out of place and they'll fall off. Just getting this guy posed for this review, I've had them fall off multiple times. So like sitting on the shelf, of course, it's going to be fine. But if you're planning on playing with this set, you're probably going to lose a few of these. So that's just something to be aware of. Not the biggest deal in the world, but yeah, that's not what I would have gone with for that connection. Moving further down the body, I think the side once again looks pretty great. I just love all the different angled and rounded pieces all throughout. Gives this guy a really unique vibe. Feels like he's actually made out of snow and ice. The middle leg is definitely the least interesting. Fairly basic design. It's connected on a rigid Technic joint which can be rotated out or in, as well as be rotated 360 degrees, assuming it doesn't get in the way of anything else. Oh, I guess I didn't mention, the front legs are connected on a larger rigid Technic joint system, which I'm sure is something you guys have seen in other sets before, specifically like larger mechs. But yeah, pretty good range of motion there too. Rotate it out a bit, rotate it in, and then of course 360 degree motion, assuming you don't hit anything else such as the back legs. But now moving to the very back legs, there's actually a really nice bend in them, and that's because the set actually uses the Evo joint piece in white, which that is an all new recolor for the set that's very interesting. So if you want to make like an Evo mech using white joints now, you have that option. You get a total of 4 of them in this set, 2 are used on each leg. I think that looks really good. The feet on the middle and back legs are the same, though of course the legs themselves are different. But yeah, once again, connected on a ball joint, pretty good range of motion, and back legs are on a rigid Technic joint. Legs and side of the dragon are pretty much exactly the same, the other side just mirrored. Absolutely beautiful though. Again, I just love how all this looks. So many unique angles and everything used. It just gives this build such a cool look. Not a huge fan of those exposed studs on the front legs right there, but that's pretty much the only part of this I would say doesn't look good, and that's a very easy fix if you wanted to change that. And now taking a look at the underside of the dragon, they even made sure this looked good too. Another new recolor for this set, this is the SCCBS like cockpit piece, now in sand blue. Again, potentially a very cool part for like custom Evo mechs. Let me know in the comments, can you guys think of any characters that would use this color like cockpit for their Evo mech? Maybe I'll use your idea in an upcoming video. But yeah, beyond that, you just have some more sand blue plates. This is the only part of the build where sand blue is used, and I think it fits in perfectly here. here. Helps make the bottom of the dragon distinct from the top, while also still fitting that like icy vibe. In my opinion, this is all just done so perfectly. In terms of posability, this build's pretty fantastic because thanks to the 6 legs, there's less of them it needs on the ground at all times. So for example, I have a front leg just all the way up like this, and he's posing just fine. With most other dragons, if you try to do this, it would topple over because those front legs are so important. No, because there is so many back legs, that's very easy to do. In fact, you can even have both front legs up like this, which is really wacky. But overall, I think the posability on this dragon is super great. Lots of personality you can get from it. There's like a million different ways to pose this guy. I will say some of the paneling on the legs is not like connected the strongest, so if you're moving the legs around a bunch, it will fall off. Not too difficult to fix, but it contributes to once again me saying this is probably better as a display model than a play model, but that doesn't mean it's bad for play by any means. It's just that the finer details are not the most sturdy. But I think that's about all I have to say for the main build, at least for now. Now let's move on to the side builds, then we'll take a look at the alternate build, then the minifigures, and then I'll give you my overall thoughts on this set as a whole. Here is the first side build in the set, this little shrine for like the Skull Army. You can imagine this as like the entrance to their base or something. And it's cute. It's nice to get like these skeleton claw pieces. Those are always very fun, but there's not a ton to it. Very simple little build. Looks good, and like would fit nicely in a display, but it's fairly small and simple all around. Happy it's here, but I don't have a ton to say about it. And then the other side builds this little like spider skeleton turret for the bad guys. It's got 4 legs, so you can imagine it like walking around if you want. It uses like those bone claw pieces to look like a crossbow, and then there's a spring load shooter in the center. So what you do is when you're ready to fire, you push down on it, it'll drop to the ground, and then push down on the spring loaded shooter at the back, and of course, it shoots out. Yeah, again, cute. Happy to have something for the bad guys, but I don't have a ton to say about this one. Wish they had something a little more substantial in these 2 builds, but these are better than nothing. But now let me show you what you can do if you take the dragon apart and rebuild it into its alternate build. Now here's the alternate build of Zane's Ice Dragon creature. It doesn't reuse any of the parts from the first bag of the set, so you don't have to like take apart the villain side builds to build this. It's only bags 2 onward, and it uses most of the pieces, but not all of them. Still though, it's impressive like how many are actually used. So let's take a look at this up a little bit closer. Full disclosure, I'm filming this part of the review before the part that you guys just saw, because the actual dragon is the build I want to keep together for this set, so that way I only have to rebuild this once rather than rebuilding it twice. So if any of this part of the review sounds redundant, that's why, but I will try to avoid that to the best of my ability. Anyway, these feet are really wacky. They use the SCCBS joints right here to create like the shape of the feet. There's of course the claws at the very end, but the coolest part for sure has to be the way these ankle joints were done. This is crazy. Like I've never seen ankle joints done like this, but it's super cool and surprisingly well done. I don't even know how to describe it, so let me just show it to you. So the feet connect onto the leg with 2 ball joints, and these can be moved forward ever so slightly, and back not very much. But the way it moves side to side is really cool. So you can see there's this Technic pin sticking out of the SCCBS joint, and when you turn the foot from side to side, it actually moves that Technic piece. Like, I'm not sure if I'm giving this all the justice it deserves, but in person, it's just crazy the movement there. Very realistic, yet limited range of motion, but just like watching the way these pieces interact, it must have taken a lot to figure out this joint like in the design room. But I applaud the designers for this. This is fantastic, and actually keeps the mech quite stable with these quite large feet. But now moving on from that and up the leg, you can see at the knee there is a bend. This is not a posable knee, it's a false knee like we've seen many times before. And I do think it's a little bit harsh here. I kind of wish it was more subtle, because it does make this thing a little bit awkward to pose. However, it's not a huge deal and I still can like get it standing up just fine. And I think it does look good when you get it in a good pose. Sort of gives off like Minotaur vibes. But yeah, it definitely can be a bit difficult at times, especially when comparing it to other mechs. However, when comparing it to other mechs, you also have to keep in mind this is an alternate build. Other mechs could use whatever parts they want. So all things considered, I think these legs are fine. They use those lighter blue pieces to give the dragon abs here, which look really funny, but actually work surprisingly well. I'm especially impressed with how they did this chest at the top. It looks surprisingly organic. I quite like these armored shoulder pads too. They reused the horns of the dragon here to create like a spike at the very end. And you can see the banners with the sword and the dragon on them are now flipped upside down to represent that the dragon's now in its mech form. Arms are on rigid Technic joints, and then a ball joint at the elbow. But it uses like this new wheel cover piece right here, which actually fits pretty well for like a wrist. And then the actual hand is a combination of gold, tan, and white. But impressively, it actually has 5 fingers to grip the sword. That's something most actual mechs don't have. So it's actually pretty nice to see here. But removing those fingers from around the sword, I can now remove that sword. And here's the build of that. Just one of those new giant gold blade pieces, a few tooth pieces at the base, which actually add a lot to it, but not a ton else to say on it. And both hands are basically identical, just mirrored. So if you want to put the sword in the dragon's other hand, or make him a second sword, you definitely could. Really love the trans blue parts here too, help keep that like icy vibe. Then coming up to the head all the way at the top, definitely connected on a little awkwardly here. It works, definitely fits, but I don't know, the dragon head on top of the very humanoid body does feel a little bit weird, but that is kind of the point of this guy, so I can't really fault it for that. that. These range of articulation though, like the neck can be rotated and then the head itself can be rotated and then obviously the jaw can move. So you could definitely get a lot of expression here. And then if you wanted Zane to actually pilot this thing, this spot right here would probably be the best place to sit him. So there he is actually riding the dragon, which is very silly but actually a lot of fun. And then finally coming down the dragon's back, this also looks surprisingly good. It definitely captures like the icy feel with like the random spikes coming out. I really love the use of these like small triangular white pieces and all of the transblue cheese slopes. I'd actually venture to say this back actually looks better than most mech backs, which is very funny, but it's true. Because they have like ice being the theme they're going for here, they captured it pretty perfectly. And that all cascades down to this tail at the bottom, which is on a rigid tectic joint. Then there's another rigid tectic joint in the center, and then a double bar at the very end, which has this transblue blade. So there's quite a bit of articulation you can get here. You move it up, move it down, both at the base and in the center. And then you can also rotate it at both of those places as well. Out of curiosity, I wanted to see if I could make the mech stand on all fours like an actual dragon because the back looks so good. And I mean, kinda, still definitely a little cursed because it does look like a humanoid bending down, which is exactly what it is. But also looks a little bit better than I'd expect it to. Has like angry cat vibes. Yeah, it's very silly, but I also kind of love it. Now to wrap things up, the range of motion on this thing is actually surprisingly good. The biggest limiter is the back and the tail because it is so heavy, but if you pose with the tail even just like near the ground, it's a lot easier. But yeah, look, I've got him in a walking pose, which is something that mechs this size usually can't do. So that's actually kind of impressive. You definitely have a much bigger range of motion on the arms than you do the legs, but look how goofy this build is. There's just so much personality here. You can even make him dab, which makes this an S tier build in my books. But no, genuinely all around, I think this build's actually really fun. I was fully expecting this just to be goofy and not much else, but no, this is surprisingly solid. He definitely looks funny because the idea of an anthropomorphic dragon is inherently kind of funny, but the designers really did a fantastic job with it. I will say some negatives about this. It definitely is a little flimsy in a few parts. Like just moving this around, there's been quite a few times where armor pieces just pop off, and that's not something you're going to see on something that's not an alternate build nearly as often, so that is definitely something to be aware of. However, that's just the thing, it is an alternate build. So unless that's an issue with the main build, which I guess you guys will have already seen, I don't know yet. I don't really fault the set for it. But there's a lot of creativity put in here, and this is a very unique build. So if you liked what you saw here, I actually highly encourage you guys to try it, because it's a ton of fun to both build and play with. Do I like it more than the main build? I'm not sure. I'll talk about that more at the end of this video, once I've actually reviewed them both for me, even though you guys have already seen both reviews. So now let's move on to the minifigures. So here are the first two minifigures in this set. We have Core Zane and Core Pixal. Now these two figures are not new for this wave, they're both reused from last wave. However, that doesn't mean they're bad by any means. Funnily enough, this is the only Core 2 set that Zane comes in. Not sure why that is, especially considering like Kai and Nia come in 4 sets. But yeah, this is the only way to get Core Zane this wave. So I guess if the Core 1 sets ever retire, this will be the only way to get him, which is something to keep in mind. But anyway, I won't spend too long on these figures because of course I have covered them before. Core Zane though is really good, probably one of my favorite core suits. I think blue and white is an excellent color combination that I'm glad he finally started using in 2022. And then metallic silver used for like the open chest looks amazing and fits Zane so well. The light yellow used on the belt and like on the knees is a little bit strange, but honestly I think it works. It's a good splash of color that helps make the suit stand out. And silver arms are a bit strange because it implies like Zane's sleeveless here. I might have preferred a different color for those arms. However, it's certainly not terrible and works well enough. And then Pixal, as I mentioned, is also not new. However, she only ever came in one set, the biggest set of the last wave, so it's really good to get her reprinted again too. Fun fact, I believe this is the first time since 2014 that Zane and Pixal have come in a set together, which is really wacky to think about. But yeah, it's very cute to see both of them here. And of course, this Pixel is a fantastic minifigure. Like, you cannot deny that this figure looks amazing. Such a high level of detail on the torso and the legs. And just like all that mechanical detailing of her Samurai X armor. I especially love like the subtle black in there that doesn't really pop all too much on top of the dark blue, however just helps add to the overall detail level. And then her color scheme of white, red, and dark blue just all looks excellent together. Of course she comes with the hair piece again here too, and the Mr. E armor in gold. And here's the two of them with their armor and hoods and hair removed, so you can see their full back torso prints and alternate face prints. Zane does not have an alternate face, just a back face print of course as always, same face he's had since what, SOG. But Pixel does have an alternate face where you can see she's happier, and back torso print looks just as good as the front. I believe that's her name written in jargon there, but once again looks really good. And then there's a full look at both their face prints on the front. Again, there's just so much personality in Pixel's face prints. I really love what they did with them. Here are the next two minifigures in the set, the Bone King and the Bone Warrior. These are the all-new villains for this wave. They've replaced the snakes from last wave with these, like, bone skeleton characters. Now, of course, because this is core, they're not canon to the show. The idea behind them is it's basically up to you to make up your own stories. Where did these guys come from? Why are the ninja fighting them? So their design is basically just vibes alone. And I think they actually genuinely look very cool. The Bone King is very different from, like, the rest of the Bone Army, and I especially love his design. While the rest rest of them use more green, he's pretty much entirely red, and especially like that black belt at the top looks fantastic. The touches of silver look really cool too. And then, like, the gold chainmail in the center is not, like, my favorite thing in the world, but I still think it works fine and fits this guy well enough. They both come with, like, new weapons for this wave, too. These are a part of a new accessory pack, similar to, like, the golden weapons from Crystallized, and pretty much every set this wave comes with the accessory pack, aside from maybe the small $10 ones. But yeah, you get a variety of weapons in that pack, all skeleton-themed. You will see them over the course of all my reviews. But even though you get every weapon in the set the ones used, you see we have a sword for the Bone King, and 2 scythes for the Bone Warrior. These do look good. I feel like they're a little thick around the edges. I feel like they could have maybe been a bit more refined, but that's not a huge deal. I do still think they're cool. And anyway, now moving on to the actual Bone Warrior minifigure. I like this guy. The spring green's an interesting color choice that we haven't seen used too often in Ninjago. It was used for like the Ghosts from Possession's weapons, but not really on the ghosts themselves. The silver does look good, though it maybe is a little overbearing. And I don't know how well the red fits with the green, but it is a unique color combination. This armor piece I've never been a fan of, but I guess it works for just a generic villain army. And then the face print's a little dull. I wish that was a bit brighter, but still looks really cool with just like the green skull. I much prefer the face print of the Bone King though, with that like metallic skull design on the green head. That like really pops. Makes for a super cool and ominous looking minifigure. There's how he looks with the helmet removed. And turning him around, you can see he has a tattered cape out the back. That's not new for this wave, it's the same tattered cape they've been using for years. But if you flip that up, you can see his torso print in the back, where again he's very armored, almost has like a spine design going down the back. Super cool all around. And then the Bone Warrior, very similar from the back. Nothing too much has changed there. And then here is the final minifigure in this set, the Bone Knight. And this guy is really cool. I much prefer him to the Bone Warrior. Not as cool as the Bone King, but I do think this design is super cool. He reuses the Master of the Mountain armor in silver, which is cool to see that part being used again, as well as the crystallized samurai helmet. He's also got like this back attachment where he's got this red cow skull, which is an awesome recolor. I love that piece. With 2 horns coming out of it and these flags hanging off. The flags are stickered parts, but it just has the logo for the Bone Warriors on it. That is super cool and just gives off amazing vibes all around. His weapon also comes from the same parts pack. This time around, it's the Bone Scythe. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Here's one last look at that back attachment, because I'm going to take it off so you guys can get a more up-close look at the actual minifigure. Super cool from all angles. I love that skull piece. So there's the Bone Knight with the back attachment removed, and you can see he's got an all-new piece attached at the neck. That is like a skeleton lower jaw piece that gives the skeletons like bigger teeth. Now, I love what that piece is trying to do in theory, however, I feel like it's a little hurt in execution. And this is once again because of LEGO's poor printing quality, because I think that lower jaw is meant to match the same color as the upper jaw, the green of like the actual skull up here. However, because as of recently, LEGO's not been very good at printing on dark colored pieces, because this guy does use a black head, that light green comes off a little bit discolored, which is fine when you're not like comparing it to an actual physical color part, but it's very clear here that spring green was supposed to match that color of the lower jaw, so as such I have a hard time seeing this as like one headpiece. Rather, it more looks like a jaw-shaped mask that's over his face, which is a fine look too, but I wish what they were going for actually worked here, because that's a very cool concept, like an attachment to make their skull look a little crazier. Instead, it just looks like more armor. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that one, and that entirely comes down to printing quality. I wish that was done better. Moving to the torso and legs though, torso design once again I much prefer to the Bone Warrior. Those sort of like mummy wraps at the top look super cool, and I think the red at the top's used a lot better, while the silver transition to the legs looks really good. The legs are the same as the Bone Warrior, but I think work better here. And then once again, there's that green ribcage in the center. Metallic silver arms also work really well here too. Here he is with the armor and everything removed so you can get a better look at that printing. And there is the back torso print, which honestly looks fantastic too. Of the 3 like villain minifigures of the set, I think the Bone Warrior is the only one I'm not super passionate about. But you know what, that's fine for a generic villain, and I love that we have multiple versions of just the quote-unquote generic villain for this wave. And the fact that there is a leader, the Bone King, that's a step up from the original core too. So yeah, on the whole I think these guys are really good. And so, what are my overall thoughts of this set? I mean, I kind of spoiled this at the beginning of this video, but this is probably one of my favorite sets of all time. That is not to say it's perfect by any means. This is very much a personal favorite, but bias aside, I still think it is really good. The theming on this set is perfect. It captures like the vibe of an ice dragon perfectly. Beyond just the colors, the shapes used communicate ice so well, and then it's just also really unique. Like 6 legs is a lot of fun. There's a ton of personality you can get just by posing it, so I think it is fantastic in that sense. 2-in-1 is also really cool. Obviously, the main build is a lot better than the alternate build. The alternate build I find super goofy, but it's also a cool alternate option. I was expecting it to be entirely goofy, but no, there are some good aspects to it. I could see value in some people maybe wanting to build the alternate build instead of the main one, because yeah, it's good for what it is. However, all that's to say, this set is not perfect. My biggest criticism is definitely the way the top and lower jaw connects. Battle droid arms just feel really lame, they don't look good, and they're like okay for posability, but the fact that the mouth can't properly close is super disappointing. Again, I would have much preferred them to do something like they did with Lloyd's Legendary Dragon for last year, where the jaw is actually built into like a brick built structure. That was so much better, and with the high price point of the set, I would have really appreciated that here. Parts of the set can also be a bit fragile, specifically like the claws on the feet and some of the paneling on the legs. It's not a huge deal, but it is definitely something to be aware of, and that's the same thing with the alternate build as well. Minifigure selection also I think is good, but it could be better. Only 5 minifigures in a $100 set's a little bit disappointing. Maybe throwing in one more ninja or one more bad guy would have been nice. And then yeah, that $100 price point, it's okay here. Probably should have been an $80 or $90 set, but it's not the worst price set in the world, so I really can't complain about that too much. But yeah, the price definitely could be a bit better. But all of that is to say, I still really love this set, and I do highly recommend it. I know it's not going to be for everybody, but I genuinely think it's one of the coolest, most unique dragons that LEGO's ever done, and also one of the most beautiful. People were complaining how the core dragons last year were just toys and they didn't look good at all. This is the opposite of that. There's like fun to be had here as a toy, but this really feels like it was meant to be a model first and then toy second. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think of this set in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please press like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. There are more early 2023 Ninjago reviews coming very soon, as well as a bunch of other themes, and there's already quite a few up on the channel. So go check that out if you haven't yet, and make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. But as for this video, I think it's about all I have to say. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!